You met? He's a Sangha member we knew each other at seminaries and stuff.
I'm the computer.
And Travis, you know, or Travis?
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
I just met Travis.
Yeah.
First.
Weird. Cool.
All right.
This reminds me of being at Naropa, where there's 5 women to everyone. So I feel very at home.
Good. We like that.
So,
Which I take it actually, over the years I've decided that what it means
no, I
is
like it.
that women,
Let's keep.
as a rule in our culture, are more spiritually
That's good.
interested and evolved for the most part
Women?
than men.
Yeah.
Now I don't say that as a criticism of any of the specific men who are here, but more as a general observation about spirituality.
Redford does look kind of hurt.
Redford looks
All right.
very happy to me.
Okay. Shall we begin?
Yeah.
And then, okay. Did you want to start us out?
So I'm gonna just coordinate, like
Okay,
the
now,
coordinator.
Are we going to sit at all, or did you?
Yes. That's
Can I
okay.
leave the sitting?
Yes. I was just gonna ask you to.
So will that be part of what we're filming?
Yeah, this isn't really filming exactly. This is
It's-
more for our
yeah.
staff who aren't here. But if there is anything,
Yeah.
so it's
you can
meant,
just
it's
pretend not
completely, so I'll just begin. So this is Frank Berliner, as you all know, we've already discussed him behind his back. And he's a wonderful, cheerful Buddhist teacher and Shambhala teacher and author. And he's been a columnist with Elephant for, I think now 13 years. And Rachel's worked with him a lot recently, more recently on his latest book. And he's my meditation instructor and whatever you want to call it, life coach, mentor, therapist, and has been invaluable to me personally. So all of you should appreciate him immensely because however bad I am, it's much reduced by his presence in my life. And the main thing I want to say is, number one, he is both honest and kind, which is a rare combination. If you think about those two qualities, it's easy to be one or the other. He's both. And very charming, no pressure. And if you could begin with meditation, we were just going to do a couple minutes. So thank you so much for joining us. It's a real honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For your kind introduction.
Sorry.
So you have sat with this group a number of times.
90% of it, but I just met Kat.
And you've
Yesterday.
given people with some form of instruction. So everyone is basically familiar with mindfulness practice.
I don't think Kat.
A review would be helpful.
Yes, basics. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do a review. First of all, thank you for having me. It's quite delightful. Again, as I say, it reminds me very much of teaching a class at Naropa, so I feel very relaxed. I thought I would begin by leading you in a short guided meditation and pay very close attention because much of what I'm going to talk about today has to do with the unique quality of intelligence that meditation brings to one's life. Okay, and it's unique and it's very precise. It's not a vague, mystical thing at all. It's very practical, it's very grounded, and it's extremely penetrating. It's very helpful. So we'll just practice for a few minutes, but hopefully it'll just give you a little bit of a taste of what meditation actually is. In this particular, and I should say this, when I say meditation, I'm not saying this is the only way to meditate. It is not. There are many other ways. Some of you may often use other ways. No problem. There's no attempt here to proselytize, to get you to practice in a certain way. However, since I've known Waylon since he was knee-high to a grasshopper, and since he and I have been deeply influenced by the same teacher and the same tradition, and since to a great degree, and I'll talk about this more, the whole zeitgeist or spirit of Elephant is very, very profoundly influenced by this particular tradition. This is the meditation that I'm going to lead you So the word meditation in Tibetan is gom, and it means to become familiar with. Become familiar with. This is a very interesting meaning. When we say to become familiar with, we mean this on two levels. We mean to become familiar with your crazy mind, to become more and more familiar with it, and to become familiar with your awakened mind at the same time. And it's very important to understand that these things are happening simultaneously. They're always happening simultaneously. They will always be happening simultaneously. In other words, the attempt to separate your crazy mind from your enlightened mind and to say, one day it's all going to be this way, and it's never going to be this way, is wishful thinking. And it actually sets you up for a lot of unnecessary disappointment. So it's very important to understand that meditation is a very realistic becoming familiar with your mind in all of its aspects. Now, that having been said, we wouldn't bother to meditate unless we felt that it was gradually strengthening our confidence in our awakened mind, our Buddha mind. I'm assuming that you all know the meaning of the word Buddha. It means awake. It just means awake. The Buddha would have found it very amusing to hear that people who followed him were Buddhists, since any kind of ism really goes against what it means to be awake. So it's a very, very clear and very pure understanding of what's possible in our life that goes beyond any ism of any kind. And I'll talk about that later as well. So what we're trying to cultivate here is becoming familiar with the crazy mind, and in the process, you could almost say wearing out our fascination with the crazy mind. Becoming thoroughly bored with the crazy mind, and in the process, discovering the Buddha mind. So I think that's enough of an introduction. Becoming familiar with your mind. So the first point, there are 3 points in any good instruction for meditation that the Buddha taught. First has to do with your body, your posture. Second has to do with the object of your attention, which in this case would be your breathing. And the third has to do with the mind itself. So whenever you sit down to meditate, you go through these 3 things very systematically. Over time, once you've been sitting for a long time, you go through them automatically, very, very quickly. It's not a big deal. It's nothing elaborate or cumbersome about it. You just do it. But in the beginning, it's very, very helpful to remember, what am I doing? Even more important, why am I doing it? So, in my own experience, there are 3 reasons why I meditate. The first is to remember my basic goodness. To remember that I have basic goodness as a human being, and that we all do. And that meditation is a way of making contact with that, becoming familiar with that, having more confidence in it. The second is to develop a mind that is not distracted in the present moment, because your life will be much more successful. It will go much better for you in an ordinary sense if you can develop a mind that is undistracted, that is not trying to be in 5 places at once. Multitasking is very overrated. The third is making friends with your mind. And that's a lifelong process, making friends with your mind. In other words, it's one thing to say, I have basic goodness. It's another to experience it at the very depth of your being with no doubt whatsoever. To actually do that is to become a Buddha. So it's very simple in a way, but it's not easy. Okay, so what are the 3 reasons that I just put out there that meditation is a good thing to do?
Basic goodness.
Remembering your basic goodness.
To be successful in the present moment and not multitask.
Yeah, I mean, you can multitask as long as each thing that you're doing in the present moment, you're doing it fully, right? Okay. So yes, to be undistracted. I would prefer if we don't remember it as not that we should not multitask. That was just a little sort of aside from me. The main point is not distracted. That's what the word mindful means, right? You're there. As my teacher used to say, either you're there for the one-shot deal of nowness or you're not. It's very straightforward.
Eminem.
You know, get one shot.
You get one shot. You're gonna blow it. What is it?
You get one shot, but then you get another shot. You keep getting
Right.
one shot, and that's all you get. There isn't anything but that. One shot, one shot, one shot. That's non-distraction.
I recently, can I interject?
Of course you can.
I recently asked Richard.
I'm amazed
Friedman-
that you haven't already.
I recently interviewed Richard Freeman at Yoga Journal, and I said, "Could I talk with you for a moment?" He said, "You just did." And I said, "Did I talk to you for a series of moments, one after another?" He said, "Okay."
That's good. So it's the series of one-shot deals. That's what non-distraction is, because that's all our life is. It's just a series of one-shot deals of nowness. But to actually show up for them, that's a whole other matter. It's that way whether we show up for them or not. So we might as well do it. Right. So what's the third
Choices.
What's the third one? Make friends with your mind. Huge, huge. The French philosopher Pascal once said, "All the problems of the world begin because a single man cannot sit alone in his room for half an hour." Why can't we sit alone in our room for half an hour without entertaining ourselves, without checking our cell phone, checking our iPad, whatever? And I do it too. Please don't think that I'm above any of these things. Meditation is a lifelong work in progress. The reason that we can't is because we're not able to relax into a sense of friendliness toward our experience. So we're always trying to add something extra to it. So making friends with your mind is the source of everything. Everything that's good in this world. I think that's actually true. Okay, so basic goodness, non-distraction, making friends. It's a very good foundation.
Do you
So-
mind if we take notes while we go? Is that okay?
I don't care. It's fine with me. It's up to Capo here. Is it okay with you?
Yeah, just only do them if you need to function. Yeah, but please.
So the first point is always the posture. You should have a good posture. What does that actually mean? Well, first thing is you should actually be in your body a little bit. And I know many of you practice yoga, so you already know how to do this. This is not rocket science particular, but it is a matter of slowing down a little bit. So what I often suggest to students when they begin a session is that you should close your eyes. Just close your eyes and have a feeling of dropping down from your brain, literally from your brain, from this thinking mind that's always chattering down into your body. Just almost like your center of gravity drops. So just feel that. Feel the way your center of gravity drops. You can place your attention in the middle of your body. From there, you can just sort of feel your bodily sensations and have a sense of dropping down. You're in your body. You are embodied. Always. As long as you're alive. From this, you can feel your seat on your cushion or on your chair, which connects you to the earth, feeling of groundedness. Your legs should be comfortably crossed. Your knees should be a little lower than your hips so that there's no strain on your back. When your knees are lower than your hips, your back naturally goes straight. So you can straighten the back and spine very deliberately now. You can lift the shoulders up to exaggerate that and then let the shoulders drop and relax. At the top of the spine, there's a slight curve as you tuck the chin in ever so slightly. There's a feeling that the top of the head is sort of pulled up toward heaven. So there's a feeling of both being connected to the earth with your seat, and being connected to the space with your head, the top of your head. Now, systematically relax various parts of the body. Relax the area around your heart, tummy. Relax your shoulders. Relax your arms and hands. The hands are placed palms down on the thighs, not too far forward and not too far back, so there's no strain on your back. The muscles of your face and jaw relax too. You can do this by parting your lips very slightly as if you were about to say ah, and placing your tongue behind the upper front teeth on the roof of your mouth. So just feel this posture now. It's grounded, it's upright, and it's relaxed. Just be the posture. So this is the first point of the instruction, which is how to work with your body. The second point of the instruction is working with the object of mindfulness. So this is very much connected with helping you to develop an undistracted mind. In this case, we use the breath. So in the beginning, with the eyes still closed, feel the movement of your breath. In order to be very precise, I recommend that you place your attention on the sensation of the breath as it goes in and out of your nostrils. Notice that as the breath comes in, as the air comes in through the nostrils, it's cooler. As it goes out through the nostrils, having mixed with the warmth of your body, it's a little warmer. Just tune into the precision and the ordinariness of this. Just as you felt the posture now, just feel the breath. It's a constantly moving, recycling bodily sensation. Now, if you haven't already, you can open up your eyes. Because the chin is tucked in, the eye gaze falls slightly in front of you, down slightly, maybe 3 or 4 feet. It's very important that the eye gaze be very soft. By soft, we mean you're not staring at objects in the visual field outside of your body. Of course, you're aware of them. You're aware of the cup, the water bottle, the carpet, of Redford, all the things that are in the field, but you don't give them any attention. You don't give them any energy. Because you're looking back in at the mind. You're looking at the mind. You're not looking out at objects. And this is an extremely important instruction. So if you need to shut your eyes slightly, sort of like half open, in order to create that sort of soft inner feeling of looking, just play with that for a little while. Flash on your posture again, your connection to the earth, your uprightness, feeling of relaxation. Is there tension somewhere that's already built up since I gave you the instruction? Check. And if there is, just very gently relax. Still mindful of the movement of the breath, the sensation as it goes in and out of the nostrils. Feeling that soft gaze which enables you to look at the mind rather than be distracted by objects. What do we mean by mind here? This is a very, very important point in meditation. What we mean by mind is anything that you can know in the present moment. Anything that you can know in the present moment is what we mean by mind in the meditation taught by the Buddha. What are these things that you can know? Your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your bodily sensations, and your sense perceptions of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. All of these are what the mind can know. So the instruction for working with your mind is don't block anything and don't chase anything. It's as if you were sitting on a bank, a very comfortable bank of moss under the trees next to a stream. And the stream just keeps going by. The objects in the stream, sticks, branches, leaves, occasional old Coke bottle, can of Sprite, just float by, and you just observe them as they move by, without moving from the bank of the stream. Flash on your posture, that feeling of being grounded, upright, and relaxed. Tune into the breath again and again. Observe the movement of your mind without blocking it or running after it. This is the practice of mindfulness meditation that the Buddha taught, and that has been taught for 2,500 years. Naturally, there'll come a moment when you are totally distracted. one of those thoughts or feelings or sensations or perceptions, and particularly emotions, just swept away your ability to be present. This is not regarded as a problem or a defeat. It is the natural play of the mind. But in meditation, use the distraction to come back to the posture, to the breath, to the attitude of observing mind play without grasping. Just sit like that. Let's just stop for a moment and I'll see if you have any questions about the instruction. Or any questions about your experience in meditation just for that brief time that we practiced together. This is not what it appears to be. Any questions?
Well,
Clear.
I can start.
It's clear.
So I guess my question, maybe for others, since I'm used to my own monkey mind or crazy mind, as you call it, is the fact that I'm having ceaseless thoughts come up, like that legend where the skeletons come up or whatever, however many you cut down. That's okay, or that happens. Is that true?
Yes, it's true. On the other hand, it's also true that over time, the velocity and volume of your thoughts or your feeling about your thoughts, your relationship to the thoughts does change.
You're wanting to buy into them.
Yeah, and one analogy that's given in Tibet is that the mind of a beginner, the relationship to thoughts is like sitting under a waterfall. And then as you progress further, it's like sitting next to a swiftly flowing, cool mountain brook. And then as you go further, it's like sitting next to a slow, broadly, gently flowing river. And then finally, it's like sitting next to the ocean on a calm day. So one does progress. If we didn't, there would be absolutely no point in doing it. Much as, in the very purest sense, all the great masters teach that having no goal orientation is really important. Still, if these things did not naturally happen over time, there'd be no reason to do it. In fact, what I like to say is that the only way that these things could not happen over time, if you do actually do practice, would be that if you originally heard the instruction to be that whenever you find yourself breathing, you should come back to your thoughts. That's the only way you could go wrong. Nor is there a problem with thoughts in themselves. Thoughts have no power to harm or help in their purest sense. They're just what the Tibetans call the play of your mind. But we have to learn how to work with that play skillfully instead of unskillfully. The reason that this is important is if we misunderstand meditation as trying to get rid of our thoughts, we've completely missed the point.
We recently this connects with why I wanted you to come on some level, because there's a vision of what you just said that is opposite of a lot of spirituality. And we recently put this inspiring poster on our spirituality page that said something like, meditation is clearing the mind of everything or something. It was sort of like get rid of everything and then you'll be happy.
Wrong.
Trump shit called it the manure.
Yeah, he said, your thoughts and your emotions and all your neurotic upheavals are the manure of your experience. And you take the manure of your experience and you spread it on the field of wakefulness. And many Tibetan teachers actually say that the more powerful your emotions are, if you practice with them, the more powerful your realization, which is a very interesting thing to say. Because basically what it's pointing out is that emotions are thoughts with a tremendous amount of energy inside of them, and that you can use that energy in order to wake up instead of in order to keep unnecessarily giving yourself pain. Yes, my editor, a superb editor. Thank you so much. It was fun for me. It was fun for me too.
I guess we've talked about this a lot, but I'm kind of a practical person, so say it lightly. So sometimes I guess I've started meditating every morning and I'll miss it sometimes just based on things come up. And I guess I'm wondering how often you recommend to meditate, how long, and then maybe do you have any suggestions for when you can't get to it at your normal time, maybe during the day? If you have any suggestions, that might be helpful.
I'm always very wary of making any recommendations about how often you should practice and how long you should practice. The only recommendation I would make is that when you do practice, that you do it 100%. In other words, that when you do practice, you sit down and you do it in a very, very deliberate way, not in a casual way. This is one of the reasons that I just gave you this guided instruction, which starts out by pointing out, this is why I'm doing it, which is called the view. Call that the view. The Tibetans call it the view. Tibetans say that if you meditate without your view, you're like a blind man walking across the plain. You don't know where you're going. You have to have a view. So if you have your view and then you have your 3 points of body, breath, mind, you know what you're doing. You know exactly what you're doing. Like any other activity in life, if you know what you're doing, you know why you're doing it, you will definitely succeed. That's the most important thing. A second point is not to beat yourself up if you don't get to the cushion every single day. The third point is to be very, very, to use your mindfulness to look at your resistance to going to the cushion, which is often the reason that you don't do it all the time. The Buddha taught that the biggest obstacle to progressing on the path is laziness. And that laziness has many very tricky aspects to it. One of them is procrastination. I'll do it tomorrow. Because we have the delusion that we have endless time. We don't. The second is called having too many activities, which is a high energy form of procrastination. The third is called discouragement. And discouragement is the result of the first two. If you have developed a life habit of procrastinating or of having too many activities in order to avoid facing your state of mind on a regular basis, you will eventually become quite depressed. Much more depressed than a person who was never told about meditation. Do you understand that? There's a saying in Tibet, those who are not awake feel pain like the stroke of a hair across the palm. Those who are awake feel pain like the stroke of a hair across the eyeball. Now, what does this mean? This doesn't mean that you're more neurotic, you're suffering more, your life gets more terrible from being more awake. But what it means is that you notice suffering in a much more subtle way. You notice all of your own games. You notice all of your own little strategies of avoidance. You notice how you create your own obstacles. In other words, as my teacher used to say, once you've been introduced to this, you're stuck with it. And it will haunt you like unfinished business. The Tibetans say it will haunt you not only for this life, but for all your future lives. I know nothing about that. I'm just a dumb Westerner who, I've got this here, I'm going to do the best I can with it. As my dad said when he was about to die, I said, what do you think's going to happen? He said, I don't know, but I'm going to take my chances. And I feel a little bit that way too. I mean, I don't know, these Tibetan teachers, I tend to feel that they knew what they were talking about because they were smarter, they were so smart about everything else. Why wouldn't they write about this? But I can't say that I know. But I do know that once you have been introduced to the practice of mindfulness and awareness, it begins to haunt you. And so that the issue of how often you do it or whether you get to the cushion every day from a point of view of being a good boy or a good girl is less important than how much you're willing to be haunted by the practice. Does that make sense? Are you all following the logic here? The practice has to be, this is another point. And the way I'm getting into my talk, it doesn't really matter, does it? This is just sort of free flowing. Finally, the West is now, so the United States is starting to really get excited about mindfulness, which is fun. I don't have a problem with that. However, to the degree that it becomes part of our materialism, part of our attitude of efficiency, part of our attitude of it's going to make everything go better, it's going to make everything go smoother, it will always remain extremely superficial. And it will be co-opted by the neurosis of our culture. I'm not saying that that's definitely going to happen, but I'm saying that any intelligent person who doesn't see the possibility of that happening is not paying attention. Now, why am I bringing this up? I'm getting a little old, so sometimes I go up on the train and I can't remember. The reason that I'm bringing this up is that the relationship with meditation has got to go much deeper than it just being a little technique that you use every day to get through your day a little bit better. Now, for many people, it will never be more than that. But if that is ultimately what the West regards as meditation, we have missed the point. Am I making sense to you? So, you said you're practical. This is what it means to be practical on a deeper level. And I would urge you not to give yourself a hard time about not getting to the cushion as often as you'd like. But when you do start to feel like, well, I'm avoiding it, that's the moment to turn toward it. Because particularly in the beginning, for a person who wants to meditate, we go through this alternation of resistance and longing. I wrote about it in my book. You edited all this stuff, so I'm not telling you anything you haven't heard. We go through, the resistance comes from the fact that looking at our crazy mind is very painful. The longing comes from the fact that glimpsing our awakened mind is as good as it gets. And so we're going back and forth. Our crazy mind is almost all too familiar to us. And the thought of facing it again at times, we just don't want to do it. But there's no way to taste the awakened mind without facing the crazy mind. That's the point. And any other story or rumor or advertisement that you're hearing from spirituality that says that it's otherwise is bullshit. And I say that plain and simple. My teacher taught me. I experimented. I found out it was true. this heavy-handed dude here, who I'm sure at times drives you all completely crazy, has been infected with the same understanding, and in his own way, he's trying to carry it out in what he's doing in the world and how he's relating to his business and, and all of those things. You can't get to the awakened without going through the devil. You can't separate. Spirituality is not about we're going to feel good and live happily ever after. That is the rose-colored dream of materialism. Life does not work that way. Which is not to say that life is a bummer, but life is this incredible mixture of joyful and sad, sweet and sour. And to fully embrace that is to be a grown-up person. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
How do you
No.
how do you embrace the crazy mind when you're meditating? You mentioned a log floating down the river, and you find that sparkling. That would be your crazy mind.
No, actually, it's more the old Sprite.
Yeah,
The old empty cans of held Sprite. Well, there's two ways that you embrace it. You don't block it. In other words, a lot of the suffering that we have in our life is because we do not allow ourselves to experience the things that we fear or the things that we reject about ourselves. So meditation is creating a very, very open space where we're allowing those things to come up and to come through.
No, it's probably really abstract and hard to give an example of something we fear within ourselves. I definitely felt like I related 100% to the doing too many things at once.
You don't relate to having anything that you fear in yourself?
I fear a bunch.
No, that's what we're talking about. We all fear things. And by the way, those fears change as in different stages of your life. You know, when you're in elementary school, you fear not being, well, more like when you're a teenager, you fear not being accepted, by your peers.
Mhm.
As you get older, you fear not getting a decent job. You fear not finding a mate. As you get much older, like myself, you fear, whoa, this is all there is, I don't have as much energy as I used to have. I have to use my energy differently. I used to have so much energy that I didn't know what to do with it, which was in itself painful. Now I don't have as much, and that's painful. There's always something. That's the nature of the beast. There's always something. There's always a little tiny pebble in the shoe of our life. And actually, the harder you try to pretend that it's not there, the larger it gets. So meditation, I like to say meditation is quitting before you're fired. In the sense that you just say, yeah, this is the deal. I'm going to just open to it. And that's where my joy will come. Because I'm not hiding at all. So the main thing in meditation is about letting it come through, first of all. Second of all, letting it come through again and again. Third of all, and this is where a certain kind of sharpness and fearlessness comes in, not indulging it once it's there. The gentleness is letting it come. Fearlessness is once it's there, you just look at it and you say, oh, same bullshit. Thoughts, bullshit, blah, blah, blah. Thinking, back to the breath, back to the body, back to the present moment. I'm not going to wallow anymore in this hallucination.
But it's gentle and humorous too.
Always.
Like the heavy-handedness thing doesn't work either.
No.
The moral.
You can't regard your thoughts as an enemy. In other words, what Pema said is, when you cut the thoughts, it's not like you take a sword to them, but it's more like popping a soap bubble with a feather. Isn't that, yeah, I knew you'd like that.
And a mark again of what we all fall into. We're sharing. I've found what you said really powerful about. The only way to get it wrong is to focus on your thoughts instead of whenever you experience your breath or the present moment. focus on your thoughts. Last night we were talking with Samara, our accountant, about how most of us wake up and immediately look at our phones, which is in a way focusing on thoughts instead of the morning sunshine or a brief moment of peace.
Indeed.
And also we're often sharing stuff that I think we all regard as sometimes as bad advice. It's very heavy-handed or serious, or I think the mark of genuine spirituality is one of them is humor and caring.
I quite agree. Grasshopper.
Just words for me, but
To some degree, it's words for all of us until we fully realize it. Any other questions about the meditation we just did?
Gandhi.
So,
Because she's so weak today, we've been carrying her around a little bit.
Oh, I see.
Well, actually, this relates.
Do you know she just had a thing? She just had surgery.
It
And it's
wasn't
been,
surgery, but
well, whatever, hospital stuff.
in the
Sorry.
hospital, but, so I'm not feeling that well. And actually, this relates. So
Sure.
Deepak Chopra, I hope, said, if you have to choose between sleeping and meditate, sleep. And so I'm wondering if when you're on the cushion or the chair or the airplane and you're feeling exhausted, if you should regard it as just a motion that's passing through, or if you should sleep
You should sleep.
and return to the cushion
You should
later.
sleep. And this actually gets into the whole question, which Chairman Trump addressed often, of the difference between dealing with psychosomatic pain and real pain.
20 months.
Mhm.
If you're tired, when a student asked the Zen master, how do I become enlightened? He said, when hungry eat, when tired sleep.
Yeah.
So the body knows what it needs to do. You follow the wisdom of the body. On the other hand, if you're not really tired and you're sleeping, which is a hallmark of depression,
Mhm.
we're not really tired, but we're sleeping because we don't want to face our life. We don't want to face the challenges that we have in our life. This is that quality of discouragement. And at that point, sleep becomes an adornment to your laziness rather than a genuine somatic response to where you are in the present moment. And you're the only one. And part of what meditation does is it sharpens your ability to distinguish between the two. And that's part of what I mean about being haunted by the practice. I mean haunted in a good way. Practice will not leave you alone because you have set up a kind of early warning system in your mind. The whole instruction about coming back to the breath, letting your thoughts go, coming back, begins to create a kind of an early warning system in your mind that's there all the time. So you become more and more awake to all the subtleties of how you avoid the present moment. But in the case that you're talking about, you should definitely.
Thanks for the permission.
Yeah, my wife and I just got back 2 days ago we spent 10 days on the East Coast with our grandchildren. I was totally exhausted by the end of COVID. And on the way back on the plane, I was aware I was starting to get sick. And, my body was aching, I was just sleeping, and there was part of me going, come on, push through this. But I didn't, and I still got sick, which is what you're doing today. And in fact, it's another perfect example. Last night, I had this sore throat, very, very, very weak, and I'm thinking, maybe I should cancel. And I'm thinking, no, should you do it? No, I should. I'm not feeling so good today. I really shouldn't do this. No. And then it took care of itself because I started feeling better. But those things go on all the time. It's very hard to keep. Rinpoche called it the Great Eastern Sun. We call it the Great Eastern Sun of Shema. The Great Eastern Sun is just a metaphor for the fact that the present moment is brilliantly shining on us forever. And either we're gonna turn and face it without sunglasses, so to speak, or not.
And it's Eastern because
And it's east because it's always rising. It's always fresh. It's always the next moment. No matter how difficult the last moment was or how hard it was for you or what a hard time you're giving yourself, the next moment is there. Okay, there it is. That's the Great Eastern Sun. We said to be a warrior is to constantly face the great eastern sun. And what is the great eastern sun? Well, it's not a real sun in the sky. It's your own mind. It's the brilliance of your own mind. And the brilliance of our own mind actually frightens us. We want it more than anything else, but it's also the thing that we don't want. We would like to be comfortable. We would like to be predictable. We would like everything to be really simple. Life has a way of constantly just pulling you up.
Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
We do
Not
have,
over.
like, I know, 15 minutes or so left. so-
That's all?
I know.
Wow, so much. All right, so I want to say a few things that I wrote down here. I got from Lindsay, I got an email reminding me that Waylon wanted me to say something about enlightened society and how elephant might contribute to that. And I thought about it and I realized I had absolutely nothing to say about that. However, I have something to say about things that are related to it.
We have nothing to say about it. We were hoping.
I think now that I'm nearly 70 years old, the whole notion of enlightened society feels very, very tricky to me, very idealistic, and there's many a slip between the cup and the lip. So, however, I do want to talk about the notion of enlightened society within elephant itself, the potential for it. Okay.
Can I just say one little thing about the Enlightened Society thing?
Yeah.
I was thinking of that one conversation we had once about Robert F. Kennedy and the clear connection you have with people who serve and try their best. And that's sort of what I was thinking.
Definitely. And in fact, it's quite depressing now to look at the landscape of political leaders in our country and how little of that motivation is actually still present. I just finished watching a long 7-part documentary about the Roosevelts, Teddy and FDR and Eleanor. They were great human beings. And their vision and their generosity make the people who are running for president now look like pygmies. And it makes me sad. That's a bit of a distraction, digression. This is what I wanted to say. Elephant straddles two worlds. On the one hand, you're a business. On the other hand, you are a place that wants to create real values and communicate them to other people. I just got the connection between him and him. Can't believe it took me that long. On the one hand, you have to be pragmatic about your business. On the other hand, you have values. We could even call them ideals. Now, this does not make you unique among businesses, but what is unique is the source of your inspiration and your values. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Like it or not, you have a boss here who, from his early childhood, is completely imbued with a particular kind of understanding, which I've been talking about all along, and I'll try to keep talking about it in more and more specific ways. The question becomes, what are the values that ultimately sustain Elephant? And I would say, and Waylon may disagree with me, but I would say that ultimately the values, or the source of the values that have to sustain Elephant, is the mind of meditation. It isn't even a set of beliefs or ideals, even though these come out in the process. But it's more of an art or a method of relating to life with skill, with openness, and without a lot of, this is what I want, with humor. In other words, we can have really wonderful values, but if we are too attached to them and we are too righteous about them, then our values become a source of suffering rather than a source of help for other people. I'm not saying that this is the case with Elephant, but what I'm saying is that Elephant exists in a world where this is always going to be the issue. How do you hold your values? Not what are your values. Your values are great, they're fine, But having great values is not in itself any guarantee that you're going to maintain a wholesome relationship to those values. Am I making any sense? Are you following this? Okay. This is where meditation is a wonderful thing. Meditation is constantly updating your relationship with everything you value, you believe, your opinions, your ideas, all of it. Meditation is creating a space in which you can look afresh over and over and over again, not only at your values, but at how you're carrying them out. Are you carrying them out? Are you actually doing it? Or has the whole thing become sort of an imitation? Trungpa Rinpoche used to say to us, meditation is the key to remaining authentic, continuously authentic. He said, every culture that was authentic had a connection with nowness. When they lost their connection with nowness, they lost their authenticity. The most powerful way to maintain your connection with nowness is to practice meditation. Why? To understand this, you have to understand, again, it's another way of talking about the distinction between the crazy mind and the awakened mind. As human beings, we have two minds. Western scientists have started framing it in terms of left brain and right brain, but even that is, I think, a little superficial. But in the Buddhist teachings, the two minds that we have are what we call the thinking mind and the mind beyond thought, or what's called non-dual awareness. Thinking mind is inherently dualistic. It implies me, the subject, you, the object, or whatever I'm thinking about, the thought is the object. Non-dual awareness, which we are cultivating in meditation, is the space in which all of that thinking is taking place. Now, if we look at the thinking mind, we can break it down. I'm moving quickly now because we're running out of time. If we look at the thinking mind in a traditional way, we can break it down further. We can talk about the logical thinking mind, and we can talk about the emotional thinking mind. The logical thinking mind is the problem-solving mind. It's the mind that, in many ways, has created human culture and all of our technology, all of our law. Everything that human beings have created in order to create a good society is partly the result of that logical thinking mind. It's clear thinking. There is no problem with clear thinking. That's why we're saying that Buddha did not teach that thought was an enemy. What Buddha taught was a problem with the thinking mind is what we call the emotional thinking mind, which is fundamentally based on what's called the I thought. That is, all of the thoughts that arise out of the emotional thinking mind are in the service of me, moi. Okay? What does this mean? It means I am the center of my universe. I use my emotions as a way of protecting myself, fortifying myself, expanding my territory. And in the process, I almost immediately create pain for others. And I ultimately create pain for myself. It's the emotional thinking mind that is the source of all of our opinions, our biases, our prejudices, our fears. And this is what the Buddha taught. The attachment to this mind is what creates our suffering. The attachment, pardon?
Can we love that mind now? The emotional?
Of course, we have, well, love is tricky. Love is tricky. We can love it, but we don't have to go to bed with it. Do you understand what I'm saying? We love it in the sense that we accept it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is that mind that we must tame. We must tame that mind. We don't get rid of that mind. We tame that mind.
Is that the mind where we find our intuition?
Yes, but the intuition also comes, the intuition only comes when we are no longer clouded or attached to that mind. All right? Yes, I brought this with me. This is wonderful. I'm sure you guys have heard this before. If not, I think you'll really enjoy it. An old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. A fight is going on inside me, he said to the boy. Have you all heard this?
Right. Yeah. We have 2 blogs on it.
You do? All right, it's great.
It's great.
It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One wolf is evil. He is anger, envy, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other is good. He is joy, benevolence, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. This same fight is going on inside you and inside every other person too. Now, this in itself is completely profound, is that we have both of these all the time. The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, which wolf will win? The old Cherokee simply replied, the one you feed. If you take nothing from this morning, take that story, okay? The one you feed. Now, let's look at meditation in terms of that story, because I thought about this. In meditation, you begin by not feeding the dark wolf, not feeding it. You don't begin by feeding the good wolf. You haven't gotten that far yet. You have to begin by boycotting, by renouncing your love affair with the dark wolf. That is the beginning of the Buddha's path. Once you have developed some stability in not feeding that angry wolf, that greedy wolf, that envious wolf, that self-pitying wolf, that arrogant wolf, once you have developed some stability by having made friends with the fact, what does it mean to make friends with it? It means that you acknowledge that that stuff is there in you. That's all it means. It doesn't mean, oh, you're nice. I like you, anger. I like you, greed. No. It's more, yeah, before I judge somebody else, let me just take a quick look here. That's what it means. Let me take a look. Having made friends with those, which is a lifelong process, as Jung himself said. Jung once said, C.G. Jung said, Carl Jung, unless human beings are able to tame this wolf inside themselves, the future of the human race is extremely doubtful. Extremely doubtful. And at the end of his life, he said, frankly, I'm not very optimistic. Because he had just lived through 2 world wars. He had seen the German genocide, all of that. Anyway, to come back to meditation. How much time do we have? 3 minutes now?
Like 5. Yeah.
I thought it was till 11:45. What happened
Well, we're
in my
just-
last 15 minutes?
We're leaving at 11:45, but
All right.
you can have 10 more minutes.
all right. We start by refraining from giving more food to the evil wolf. Make sense? That's what meditation is to begin with. Then as we develop more and more strength,
Redford.
that's right. So we develop more and more strength and confidence that we have to some degree tamed that, then we begin to feed the good wolf. We begin to feed the good wolf. We begin to feed the good wolf with seeds of joy, of love, of compassion, of equanimity, what the Buddha called the 4 immeasurables, and all of those other wonderful things. And in the process, we naturally feel a tremendous desire to benefit other people, to serve other people, to be generous, all of these things. But this feeling comes out with real strength and real integrity because we have tamed the wolf of arrogance, greed, and hatred. We have to tame that wolf first. That is our first order of business. And any attempt to pretend to compassion, love, joy, equanimity on a foundation of anger, hatred, greed, envy, and arrogance is doomed to fail. And then the final stage of meditation is that we begin to see the sacredness of the whole world. And we begin to see it, we begin to feel it in our heart. And this is where Chogyam Trungpa was truly a genius. And this is where I always feel like when I look at this next generation, I feel so sad that you never met him, because he was so amazing that way. He saw the world so clearly, and he was always amazed by the beauty of the world. Every moment. It's the great eastern sun. And he felt that as an experience. And he would say to us, until you feel this in your heart, moment after moment, your attempts to make the world a better place, to do all this ecological good and all the rest of it, will ultimately only be based on you're trying to fight an enemy, rather than that you are expressing from your heart what you know is most valuable and most beautiful in this life, and it must be preserved. I watched The Lord of the Rings with my grandsons the other night. It's three. We watched 3 episodes. We watched 3 in a row.
Wow.
At the end, I mean, it was
Like
9
3
hours. It was 9 hours. I was total. That's why I'm sick. I was totally exhausted. Watching all these orcs coming at me off the screen, you know. But the point there was, Tolkien was writing about the fact that this beautiful world is vanishing. It's vanishing because our materialism has become so destructive, because it is motivated by this dark wolf. And until we have tamed the dark wolf in our own being, there is no hope of changing this world. What I find most inspiring and sweet and beautiful and poignant about Elephant is that you have a person leading you who got a firsthand taste of this understanding of reality, and in his own way is trying to find a way to manifest that in the world. And you guys just happen to be his accomplices, like it or not. And of course, it's good for you to give him feedback when he's an asshole. That's very, very important. And that could be a whole other talk about leadership and all the rest of it. And I
Just
don't
point
have
at
time
me
for
and
that.
say, Dark Wolf.
Yeah, dark wolf, back off. Back
I'm
off.
not feeding you cookies.
Okay. So I guess what I would say to you is that a very good group practice would be for you to sit each day for a couple of minutes together, just even for a couple of minutes, and to remember these things. It's just a question of touching in. It's not a question of creating a cult. This isn't some sort of Scientology brainwashing. Buddhism is, he didn't even call it Buddhism at the end. He called it Shambhala. He called it becoming a full human being. He didn't give a shit about Buddhism. He didn't care. That's why he got rid of all the cultural, so many of the cultural baggage that went with it that all the other Tibetans wanted to keep. He wasn't interested in creating a Tibetan oligarchy here in this country. He knew that it wasn't going to happen. This is a whole different world. I can't believe I have this much energy. But there are some things about what the Buddha taught that they'll never change, and they're not limited by the word Buddhism. This is not a system of beliefs. It's a method for being a sane person and for fully realizing your human life and helping others realize it. And what could possibly be better than that? Let's see.
We have a solid 5 minutes.
Okay. Oh, Lord of the Rings. If you ever watch it again, Lord of the Rings. And I didn't really get it the first time, because I'd seen this many years ago. Frodo, the Hobbit, that beautiful, with his huge blue eyes, he's got the ring the whole time, and how much he suffers. How much he
My
suffers.
precious.
Well, no, Gollum. Gollum has completely lost his humanity because of his attachment to the ring. Frodo is struggling not to lose his humanity, and he has to go into the very depths of the Two Towers. He has to go into the very heart of darkness, and right in the middle of the fires of hell, basically, he's still clinging to the ring, and Gollum is still trying to take it away from him, and finally he just lets it go. When he lets the ring go, it goes down into this flaming furnace, and it melts. And when it melts, the Two Towers and the entire hierarchy and structure of evil collapses. It just, the whole thing collapses. And you realize that the ring was this attachment to wealth, power over others, greed, aggression, harming others, suffering, endless suffering. And Frodo had to make the hero's journey to the center of the belly of the beast and then let it go. He let it go. And as soon as it melted, that whole structure collapsed. So that's a metaphor for the transformative power of meditation practice when it is done free from naive, self-serving materialism. And I can give a whole talk on that some other day. That's enough for now. Thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
so much.
I'd like to dedicate the merit. It's very traditional. Dedicating the merit means whatever merit has come from our being together for the last hour and 15 minutes, may that merit go out into the world like the wind going through prayer flags. May whatever tiny bit of benefit has come from our being together, may it benefit others. It's a way of expressing generosity for teaching. Okay. May there be merit. May all beings enjoy happiness and the root of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the root of suffering. May they not be separated from the great happiness, devoid of suffering. May they dwell in the great equanimity, free from passion, aggression, and prejudice. Just let your mind rest on the sound. That is the nowness. John, good show.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, sweetheart.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
So I believe we've mailed an offering to Mr. Berliner. Is that correct?
You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Well, we're not worried. We're appreciative. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Um,